Football. Wildcats. Football. Wildcats. Football. Wildcats. Football. I got it. Football. Wildcats. Football. Wildcats. Football. Wildcats. Football.
Welcome to the Married with Picks podcast, Season 5, Episode 9, Week 9. All right, Steve. So we're a little late on this one, so we're going to try to do this pretty quick because inevitably a child or a dog is going to interrupt this thing. We're also recording this in the afternoon for the first time, so I'm not sure what this is going to look like.
Yeah, Saturday afternoon. Got a little jammed up with travel baseball last night, so I'm going to try to make it quick.
All right, so we have two teams on bye this week, Steelers and 49ers. First game on the list is Patriots at Titans. This opened at Titans minus 2.5. It's at Titans minus 3.5. So this is a bit of a shit game, in my opinion. We also don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be, I don't think, for either one. Drake May left the game last week. He's in concussion protocol. He has not cleared. There is some optimism as of this morning that he will clear, but it's certainly not 100%. And we don't know who is going to start on the other side, whether it will be Will Levis or Mason Rudolph. I don't know that it matters a whole lot either way. One interesting stat that some people are talking about in the news is that teams that play the Lions lose the following week. So the Titans played the Lions last week. The rationale is kind of being that the Lions are a physical team and they take it out of you. So Titans played the Lions last week. They certainly don't need any help losing games. I certainly don't want to take the Titans as a 3.5 point favorites. Generally, two shit teams, you take the points. So that would be my position. I'm certainly not advocating for putting a whole lot on this game, period.
No, I think you said it exactly right. Two bad teams, take the points. The Titans are 3.5 point favorites at home. They haven't won a game at home yet. They're 0-3. They're 1-6 overall. New England's not that much better, but they're 2-6. I love the fact that you brought up the streak of teams playing against the Lions the next week. Don't win the game. That's usually what happens when you have a team that's playing very physical, very good. They're exhausted. The team get a little beat up and they don't play well the next week. That's different to see the Lions being that team, right? But there's a trend like this typically from one or two teams that are at the top of the standing each year. If you take a look at the next week after they play a team, how the other team performs is usually not good. So with that being said, I like the Patriots here. Not a strong play because, again, it's two bad teams, but take the Pats.
All right, next game is the Saints at the Panthers. This opened at Saints minus 1. It's at Saints minus 7.5. This is a division game. These teams played back in week 1, which seems like a distant memory at this point, especially when it comes to the Saints. Saints won that game 47-10. They will get Derek Carr back at quarterback this week. There is no Rashid Shaheed, but they will have Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara. Panthers will be starting Bryce Young again in this game, and they did trade away perhaps their one good player, Deontay Johnson. So I think this is certainly a chance for the Saints to get back to the way they started this season. So I got to take the 7.5 here.
Well, Derek Carr's playing this week, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that should make a difference. However, there is still a lot of points here for two basically bad teams. So I'm going to lean on the Panthers as well, getting 7.
Ew. Okay. All right. Next game is the Broncos at the Ravens. This opened at Ravens minus 10.5. It's at Ravens minus 9.5. So we have the Denver Broncos, who last week were a 12.5 point favorites against the Panthers, coming into this week as a 9.5 point underdog. The Ravens and the Broncos are both 5-3 teams. So I've been back and forth on this one. It looks like the money is leaning towards the Broncos. I have trouble with the line being this big in this situation. Ravens haven't really blown out teams this year. They did beat the Bills pretty handily, 35-10, and they won by 10 against the Bucs. But they do have a tendency to allow teams back into these games. The line and the fact that the money is on the Broncos is actually going to put me on the side of the Ravens. I feel like Vegas wants me to take the points, so I'm going to take the Ravens. I would recommend putting it in a teaser, though.
I'm going to take the Broncos on the road here. It's just too many points, and Nix looks like he's suitable enough to be able to keep games close and not really allow the Broncos to get blown out with that defense that they have. So I think it's a good combination. I don't think the Broncos are that great, but the Ravens, I think, are proving that they're not necessarily a juggernaut that's going to blow out teams by 30 points. So I think it's too many points here. I'll take the Broncos.
Okay.
You want to bet on that one?
No, not at all. Okay, next game is the Raiders at the Bengals. Opened at Bengals -6.5. It's at Bengals -7.5. So one huge miss I had last week when we did the podcast when the Bengals played the Eagles was to mention T. Higgins. T. Higgins did not play last week, and the Bengals obviously ended up getting blown out by the Eagles. He is doubtful in this game. The Bengals are 0-3 when he's not on the field. The Bengals have no real run game. And if they don't have T. Higgins out there, the only real weapon is Jamar Chase. If the other team only has to worry about Jamar Chase, I think it's making it too easy. So I'm going to take the points here and take the Raiders as long as T. Higgins does not play, which he is doubtful at this point.
Yeah, I think the Bengals seem like they're not the team from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? They're struggling, and they got their ass kicked last week against the Eagles, who had been struggling pretty much throughout the whole season. So maybe something clicked with the Eagles, but the Bengals, specifically just do not look that good. I think you got to take the points here. I'm not in love with the Raiders, but I would play the Raiders and take the points and just don't even watch the game.
All right, same side of that one. All right, so next game is the Chargers at the Browns. Browns open at -3. It's shifted over to Chargers -1.5. This is a tough game because I don't have a good feel for the Chargers. They were obviously playing a little more of a defensive game under Harbaugh. They kind of want to limit the big plays, force you into the shorter throws. We have Jameis Winston at quarterback on the other side of the field. That's not necessarily his game or his strong suit. I think what it is going to come down to is Jameis Winston going to make mistakes, which he probably is going to make some. Will it be enough? I'm still going to take the points and just hope that he limits his mistakes enough that they can pull out the victory here.
The thing is I don't think here that the Chargers offense is that strong. They can put up points against a decent defense, but I like the Browns defense the way they'll match up here against the Chargers, and I think Jameis Winston will have these guys playing ball after you saw they beat the Ravens last week. That's not a fluke, right? Jameis Winston is trying to be the leader, trying to be the man, and grab the team up on his shoulders, and it worked last week against a much better team in the Ravens. I feel the Ravens are much better than what the Chargers are, but obviously any given Sunday here, the game's at the Browns.
It's at the Browns, yeah.
I'm going to take the Browns.
Last year, the Browns defense played a lot better at home than they did on the road. I think Jameis coming in last week might have been the spark that the rest of the team needed to, really compete. So,
well, that's what you got to really look at here with Jameis coming in. Like, Jameis has the ability, but you don't have to be in love with Jameis Winston. Lord knows that I'm not, based off the way he acts and tries to. Seems like a high school mentality. Rah, let's get behind me, which doesn't work necessarily in the NFL. But I think this contradicts what would normally work because the rest of the Browns are just happy to have the other quarterback, Deshaun Watson, out of the picture based off the situation. So they obviously rallied behind him last week, and I think that they'll do the same thing this week.
All right, so next game is the Cowboys at the Falcons.
Did you take there?
The Browns.
Okay.
Cowboys at Falcons. Cowboys open as -1 point favorites. It has shifted over to Falcons -3. So I don't have a lot of like great information on this game. I guess to me, this is just kind of like a spot game. It kind of has the feeling of the Seahawks Falcons game from 2 weeks ago. Cowboys obviously not living up to the hype maybe that they had entering into the season. Falcons certainly have looked like world beaters the last couple weeks, but they also played the Bucs and the Panthers. Cowboys are coming off of 2 tough losses. Obviously got blown out by Detroit. They had the bye week, came back and played San Fran. They did kind of squeak their way back into that one to some extent. But I do think the Cowboys will be able to move the ball against the Falcons. It sounds like Micah Parsons will still be out this week. I would have liked to have seen him come back so that they could get a little bit of pressure on Kirk Cousins. But I'm just going to take the points and cross my fingers on this one, really.
I mean, it's tough. The Cowboys are in shambles, right? I mean, Brandon Cooks is on the IR. They really don't have much of wide receiver talent other than CeeDee Lamb. Jalen Tolbert and Jalen Brooks are the other wide receivers there, but nothing that's going to scare you. Jake Ferguson at tight end, they need to get him the ball a little bit more if they're going to take this game. But the biggest problem is Micah Parsons, right? Micah Parsons is out again.
Only you could mispronounce the last name. I have trouble with the first name. Parsons.
Well, even though I think the Cowboys have struggled, this is probably a get-right week.
Yeah.
Based off playing the Falcons, and I think that they can get pressure still with Parsons out. They should be able to still get pressure on Cousins, and we know how Cousins will falter under pressure.
Right.
It's the key. You just got to get more people in and hit him around a little bit, and then they'll start throwing the ball away. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys one more week here. If they can't beat the Falcons, they might be dead to me.
All right. Next game is the Dolphins at the Bills. This opened at -3 in favor of the Bills. It's up to 5.5. So this is my favorite game of the week. This is a division game between these teams. Bills this year have obviously beat up on bad teams, and in general, over the last few years, they have dominated this matchup against the Dolphins. There's also always been able to limit Tyreek Hill when they play. Bills obviously won the game earlier this year. That was the game where Tua went out with the concussion, but it was not pretty up until the point that he left the game. I think the score at that point was maybe 24-10. And it ended, there wasn't a whole lot of offense after Tua left, but the Bills won that game 31-10. Last year in the 2 matchups, the Bills won 21-14 and 48-20. Dolphins have not done anything this year to for me to have any faith in them to develop a strategy that's going to beat the Bills this time around. I'm curious to see that you do have the Dolphins circled on your card.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Dolphins here. Amari Cooper may or may not play. He's questionable with a bad wrist. But I think the Dolphins the key was getting to one week of action to knock the rust off before this game. And I think this is the game that Tua comes back and says, hey, look at me. I'm back and I'm ready to play some ball. I know he's had a lot of build up, aggression since he's got concussed week 2. But I think this is where the Dolphins are going to show up and kind of kick away the bad streak that they have playing against the Buffalo Bills. So I'm looking at the Dolphins here in an upset. I'll take 5.5 points. Is he still 5.5?
Yeah, 5.5. I've been waiting for the Dolphins to show up all year. I don't have any faith they're going to do it this week.
Okay, so I'm taking them this week, and I still feel the same way that I felt against the Cowboys. Like, I'm going to take them again, and they don't win this one, they're dead to me.
All right. Next game is the Washington Commanders at the New York Giants. This game opened at Giants -1.5. It's at Commanders -3.5. This is a division game. Giants have historically been competitive in this matchup. These teams played back in week 2. Washington pulled out the victory in that game 21-18 on an end of game field goal. Giants did lose their kicker in that game, so they weren't able to kick field goals. Probably would have won that game if they had their kicker. They did hold Washington to 7 field goals. Now, this was obviously kind of early on. Jaden Daniels, it was only his second start. He's probably come a ways since then. My biggest thing on this game is, so last week, the Jets played the Patriots in New England. The Jets, who were 2 and whatever at the time, Patriots were 1-6 at the time. Jets were a 7-point favorite in that game. Now we have Washington, who is 6-2 on the season, playing at the Giants in a division game. Giants are 2-6 on the season, and they're only 3.5-point favorites. The line smells funny. Everybody's going to be on Washington. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to take the Giants and hold my nose.
I'm doing the same thing. I'm going Giants as well. Tyrone Tracy's healthy. He has no injury designation coming in, and it looks like he is dethroned Devin Singletary as the starter. And I like that. I think
deservedly so.
Tracy is very dynamic, right, and can hit that home run ball from anywhere on the field and score a touchdown. Malik Neighbors is back. I know he came back last week, but I think he's a little more healthy. And then you got to kind of take a look. I know it's week to week, and the last week shouldn't really matter, but it's an ebb and flow to the NFL season we've talked about before. Washington comes in, gets that miracle win on the Hail Mary last week at home. They're undefeated at home. They're only 2-2 on the road, right? And they're going to New York. So I think after the high of last week of getting that win where they should have lost to the Bears, who are not really that good, let's be honest, I think this is where the Giants get one. It's a division matchup. I like the analogy of, basically you're passing a pig farm and hold your nose, don't watch the game, and just bet the Giants and see it come in.
All right. Same side of that one. Next game is the Bears at the Cardinals. This opened at Bears -1. It has shifted to Cardinals -1.5. I don't really have a good feel for either one of these teams. Cardinals have been playing better. They did get their second consecutive win last week. But other than the Rams back in week 2 or 3 where they won 41-10, their other wins have only been by 1 or 2 points on a end of game field goal. The Bears have rolled some bad teams before their bye week. Obviously came out last week against Washington and looked a little unprepared. The Bears have not allowed opposing team to score more than 21 points in a game. Interesting stat. Matt Eberflus, as the coach of the Bears, is 0-17 on the road on a Sunday, which most games are on a Sunday. 3-19 overall in his career as the coach of the Bears. So the Bears just not playing good on the road. I think I'm going to take the Cardinals, but that's just a...
Doesn't feel like you're very strong on that one.
It's not.
You think you're going to take the Cardinals?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going the other way. I know we just said that I'm not that impressed with the Bears, but again, given the fact that the Bears gave the game away, they came back at the end to take the lead with inside the 2-minute warning and then gave it away on the Hail Mary. I think they come back on the road against the Cardinals and win. Cardinals have won 2 in a row. Come on, the Cards are not good enough to win 3 games in a row. That's the main reason why I'm going Bears here. If you look at the standings in the NFC West, they're at the top of them. I mean, they're tied with San Fran and Seattle. They're all 4-4, and the Rams are right behind them at 3-4. So it's anybody's division, but I think Arizona takes the L this week. They won't get to 3 wins in a row. Take the Bears +1.5.
All right. All right. Next game is the Jaguars at the Eagles. This opened at Eagles -3.5. It's up to Eagles -7.5. Now, this is being dubbed the Doug Peterson revenge game, but we've seen this before. These teams played back in 2022. Eagles won that game 29-21. The Jaguars, Christian Kirk, I believe, is out for the season, or at least for several weeks. Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. are both going to be game time decisions in this game. So I don't know who Trevor Lawrence is going to be throwing the ball to other than Evan Ingram. Eagles do have a good run defense, so I don't know how far they're going to get on the ground. Jaguars do not have much of a pass rush, so I don't think that they're going to be able to do what they would need to do if their only path to victory in this game would be to get to Jalen Hurts. I don't think they're going to be able to do that either. Now, the money is on the Eagles in this game. That has me worried a little bit, especially with that hook on there. So I would maybe put the Eagles and the Ravens in a teaser and call it a day. But I am going to go with the Eagles, even with the hook.
Whether these guys that I'm about to mention play or not, they're all listed as questionable and banged up. So if you're going to go up against the Eagles, their defense looks like they're flying around and hitting. And they're starting to get their direction under Vic Fangio.
I had heard on the radio that like Fangio's style of defense, it takes a little while to develop. So maybe they're hitting their stride.
Yeah, but and I would also say that almost anytime you have a change, we all know anytime you have a change in coordinator at the beginning of the season, going into a new season, that you're not necessarily going to know the scheme well the first month or two compared to the last month or two, right? You're going to build and get stronger as long as you have the players as you go. And it's the same way with the offense. So that's why it's interesting to see what the Eagles are going to do, because they're learning a new offense, they're learning a new defense, and the coordinators from last year both got fired, both sucked, and it's the reason why they fell off the edge of a cliff at the end of the season last year. But going back to the status of some of the players for Jacksonville, you got Etienne and Bigsby. They're formidable running game, both questionable. Brian Thomas, the great rookie out of LSU, is questionable. Gabe Davis is questionable from the Buffalo Bills. Christian Kirk is out, and Devin Duvernay is on IR. So you've got a bunch of banged up guys. Evan Ingram is healthy, but even if some of these guys do play, they're going to kind of be limited in the fact that they're banged up. So I don't like laying 7.5 with the Eagles until we see what we really have here, but I don't think that you have any other choice. I know Doug will have the boys ready to play in the beginning of the game. They may even take the lead in the first half, but I think by the time the second half comes around, the Eagles are going to separate themselves just like they did against the Bengals last week.
Yeah, the more you talk about this game, the more I get that sense of feels like you're saying there's no way. And as soon as you say there's no way in the NFL, that's exactly what happens. So,
Like Jacksonville?
Yeah. It just has me worried. I mean, I would be very comfortable taking the Eagles at 7.5 just based on the game and where these teams are. But
listen, at this point of the season, you got to be scared giving up 7.5. So I wouldn't call it a huge
definitely
play.
tease it.
Yeah.
All right, next game is the Rams at the Seahawks. This is a division game, opened at and is still at Rams -1.5. So this is that division where kind of all these teams have each other's numbers. So the Rams have historically dominated the matchup with the Seahawks. Their 2 losses in the 22 season came when the Rams had starting quarterback Wolford and when they had Baker Mayfield for that one game. Last year, the Rams won both matchups 30-13 and 17-16. So Rams looked much better last week in Thursday Night Football because they had Puka and Kupp back on the field. Now, Puka did pull up on the injury report at practice, I think on Thursday. But reports are that he should play. DK Metcalf on the other side has been ruled out again for the Seahawks. So I'm going on the side of history here and taking the Rams in this one.
Well, that's what I was trying to quickly get an update for today for Puka Nacua, who definitely slammed his knee again in practice. It's the same knee that's been bothering him that caused him to miss games earlier in the season. So that's not good, because when you could see last week when Stafford has both him and Cooper on the field, that they're a completely different offense. And Williams gets going, I mean, they're as good as anybody's offense in the league, right? So if he doesn't play, it takes a big weapon off the field and could change the outlook of this game. But going into Seattle, I like the Seahawks here. Again, we talked about the Rams being a half a game behind everybody else that's tied for the division at 4-4. But I think that this is a spot where the Rams, who have looked strong over the last couple of weeks, I'm trying to see real quick.
They looked horrible the week before, but
well, they've won 2 games in a row. So
yeah, they beat the Raiders, but that was horrible.
But
much better with these other guys on the field.
It's a different team, right? So it's like, unless you know. I wouldn't make a decision until you know if Nacua is playing. And if he's playing, then don't play the game as if he's going to be limited. Like we saw him bounce back quickly when he wasn't supposed to play for another week or two, coming off of that knee injury, and he lit the field up. And Stafford was not scared to go to him. So I would say maybe be hesitant a little bit if Nacua is playing, but if not, then be confident in the Seattle Seahawks playing at home. +1.5. They're getting points. They're home dog. They're live. Go Seahawks.
Really?
Yeah, it's -1.5 Rams.
Okay. All right, next game is the Lions at the Packers. This opened at Packers -1.5. It has shifted to Lions -2.5. This is a division game. Lions have won 4 of the last 5 meetings between these teams. Packers actually won the game last year, which I remember, on Thanksgiving, 29-22. Now, we don't know for sure if Love is going to play. I think most recent reports seem to suggest that he is going to. I was really hoping that we were going to get Malik Willis at quarterback because I had faith in Dan Campbell and the Lions to prove that Malik Willis is not a good quarterback. They did say during that game last week that Love couldn't move once he kind of took that shot to the groin. So I'm not sure that he's going to be 100%. I'm not sure it's a smart philosophy for them to put him out there this week if he's not 100% with the bye week coming next week. But regardless of the starting quarterback, I'm still going to take the Lions here.
I think I'm going to take the Lions as well. They're on the road. It's -2.5 as long as it stays under 3 points. The Lions just like world beaters right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say the Lions, right? Even though they've been slowly creeping up over the last couple of years as a really good team, with just so many years of futility in Detroit. But I think you got to take the Lions here. There's nothing to show that they should back off. Jared Goff's playing well, and it's not like the Jared Goff show, right? They're leaning into the running game. They got Gibbs. They got Montgomery, both running the ball well. And the Sun God.
You can run on the Packers.
Yeah,
they are without Jameson Williams, who's got himself in a bunch of trouble, apparently. And Sam Laporta, who hasn't been terribly involved this year.
Which is odd, because Laporta has been really good the last year. Last year he was really good. But he's suspended, right? Jameson Williams.
Yeah.
So you still have Tim Patrick.
2 games for PE, whatever you call him. But now
performance enhancing drugs.
Then he got himself in something with a gun. So
great.
He's got like the trifecta.
Well, Amon-Ra St. Brown is the man in Detroit, and he'll be on the field. So that's good enough for me to take Detroit. Look for them to have at least a 3-point win here.
All right, next game is the Colts at the Vikings. Open at Vikings -1. It is at Vikings -5.5. I was surprised to see that the money in this one is heavily on the Vikings. So the Colts have announced that they have benched Anthony Richardson. They will be starting Joe Flacco in this game. I'm curious to see how Flacco does up against the Brian Flores defense. Last week, Matt Stafford seemed to fare okay against him. So hopefully the other veteran here in Joe Flacco can identify Flores' blitzes. Vikings lost their left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, in the game against the Rams. They traded for Cam Robinson from the Jaguars to replace him. I don't know if he's starting in this game. The Colts have on the season been a great cover team. So they're obviously dogs in a lot of these games that they're not winning, but they are covering the spread. They did that last week. And I do like to take them in those spots, especially with Joe Flacco in now at quarterback. And like I said, with the money heavily on the Vikings, I think this is a good spot to take the Colts. And I don't know, all the hype over Darnold early on kind of came back down to earth last week, and I feel like he's just going to fade back into obscurity. What do you got?
I like the Vikings. They've lost 2 in a row. I don't see them losing 3 in a row after that undefeated start. They've had 2 tough matchups for over the last 2 weeks.
I think they were overachieving.
I think that defense is for real, and I like Sam Darnold, like I told you before. The thing that worries me, obviously, here is that's the right move by the Colts to get rid of Richardson, or at least to put him on the bench. He's not really, it's probably tough drafting him in the first place because he doesn't have a lot of experience, and it's a lot like Tannehill. Like, you're going to have to either let him go and teach him to fully commit, or he should have made the move in the first place. So it seems like they're not fully committing. So, probably
I think
the
they go
Richardson
so far
show
as
is
to
over.
say that Flacco is going to start going forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, Flacco is definitely the better option.
I think that movie pool where he said he was tired and he took himself out of the game was just like...
Yeah, it's total bullshit.
Nail in the coffin.
At least get in there and, call a run play, right? Catch your breath and then live the fight on second down. But, it's just stupid to even admit that at this point. You're an NFL quarterback. You shouldn't be getting tired after 2 runs, right? So... thing that worries me is that Flacco is obviously, you never know what you're going to get. He has the ability. We went on and on at length about Flacco, a podcast or two about what he brings to the table. So I'm going to spare you my Joe Flacco University of Delaware rah-rah speech, but it worries me a little bit that he's in this game. But I think that the Vikings are catching him at the right time with 2 consecutive losses. They will not lose a third time in a row.
I think the left tackle is big too, though.
We'll see how he plays. That's a question mark. Cam
Should
Robinson
be an interesting
Cam
game
Robinson
in this.
is playing, by the way.
Okay, this was this flexed with the Eagles game?
Yes.
Okay,
The
so they
Eagles are
moved this
supposed to be an
into
8 o'clock game.
okay, so they moved this to the Sunday night game.
Yeah, and honestly, I would have chosen the Lions and the Packers, so I don't know what they were thinking. But they must have had to make this move, and the Vikings were undefeated and get them into primetime position, right?
Yeah, what do they want you to see?
I would rather have Lions-Packers, right?
No, I don't know. I'm wondering what they want you to see in this game. All right, so the final game of the week is the Monday night game. Bucks at Chiefs. Chiefs open at -7. It's up to -9.5. Obviously, the Bucks have the wide receiver injuries. No Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin. They did put up a fight against the Falcons last week. I think the difference here is going to be that Steve Spagnuolo's defense is going to put more pressure on Baker Mayfield than the Falcons did last week. When pressured, he's going to make mistakes. I have a hard time with the Chiefs because anytime I take them as a big favorite, aka last week, they don't cover. When I think that they're not going to cover, they do. So this week, I'm going to take the Chiefs, and the Bucks are a public underdog this week, so that makes me feel a little bit better in my position on the Chiefs. But this would be another one you could put in a teaser.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bucks. I just think it's a little bit too much of a line here. But the one thing I wasn't sure of, which I just thought of, is Mike Evans playing, right? So Mike Evans is not playing. I'm switching off the Bucks. They're sucked without them. So there's no way without Mike Evans and obviously without Godwin that they're going to beat the Chiefs. I'll take the Chiefs, and I would lay up to 10.
All right, same side of that one. All right, so good. We got that done in about half an hour. That'll do it for us for week 9. I actually feel pretty good about this week now. If you're watching, like, subscribe, and we will see you back here for week 10. Peace out.